It is so good to see all of you join here live. Like, I can't believe there's so many faces on here. But some of you know me, some of you don't know me. My own name is Aoife, and I am the founder of Create Connection. And I help female founders and women just like you make the impossible possible, not by doing more, but by moving through subconscious blocks, expanding your nervous system's capacity, and designing a life and business that feels good for you. And I know some of you know my story, some of you know me personally, and some of you don't, but welcome either way. And it's so glad to be able to jump on here live with you. And before we jump in, I know I had spoke to a few of you online. I would love to hear where you're jumping in from. Are you jumping in from Ireland, Sydney, Bali, wherever? I would love to just make this feel alive as well. Like, I want you to be in this experience with me. I don't want me to be just talking at you for the next 2 days, and just to build this energy. So I would love to hear where you're calling from. Let me know. Bali. Amazing. Oh, Lanzarote. Love that. Amazing. Sydney, Ireland. Oh my God. I was back in Ireland. Guys, the cold. I was not prepared for it. I had not been back in Ireland during winter months in like over 3 years. And I honestly, I didn't think I could experience cold like it. So fair play to you. Amazing. Just gonna let more people in. Cork. Yes. Cork girly. Amazing. So over the next 2 days, I really want you to sit in this energy of like infinite possibilities. And although I'm going to be leading this masterclass, I want you to be jumping in as well. Like, I want you to be immersed in this experience. So use the chat box, share your reflections, like keep the energy flowing, and like you being able to initiate your voice is going to initiate that change. So like, take the notes, but I don't want you to just sit back and take the notes. Share your voice, share what you're ready to make change, whether it's realizations, whether it's something that is just after landing for you. And by you simply sharing that with everybody else, that is giving permission to everyone else to be like, fuck it, maybe I'm feeling that as well. So you simply being you is also giving the permission slip to everybody else. So please use that chat box, because it's actually insane that so many of you have showed up and to see so many of your faces. And I am buzzing to be in the space with you for the next 2 days. And what I'm going to share with you over the next 2 days is genuinely does have the capacity to change your life if you're willing to put in the work and actually implement it. So today we're going to be running through the Conscious Founder Framework, which is the exact framework that I use inside of my Elevate mentorship. And this mentorship is for the girlies who have the strategy for their business, but they might keep hitting that resistance. They might feel overwhelmed, or they feel like they're meant for more, but don't know how to access it. And most importantly, they are willing and wanting to go a bit deeper. And when we create those internal shifts, those are the kind of shifts that change our external reality. And a lot of you sitting on this call know that when you do make those internal shifts and they start to move through you, it doesn't just impact your business, but it impacts your health, it impacts your relationships, it impacts your own self-trust, your belief in yourself, your own self of worth and sense of self. So if you are a woman in business, your business is simply an extension of you, and it will always reflect back to you the capacity that you have to hold. So if you are wanting to expand your capacity, expanding your capacity to hold the life that you're calling in, your external reality has no choice but to respond, because you will feel safe holding that level. And my work is a blend of nervous system led work, energetics, embodiment, and somatic healing. It's about moving through those subconscious blocks, the patterns that are running our day to day, 90% underneath the surface, and rewiring what is outdated, the things that no longer serve us, so that we can actually build a life that feels aligned for us. And I know by you just being on this call that you are a woman that thinks a little differently, that you want more from your life, and you are willing to question what we have been taught has been realistic or what's possible. And that is exactly why I'm here as well, because today we are going to be going through the Conscious Founder Framework, which you are going to be able to start to initiate that change. And maybe it's because right now you have a goal or a milestone that feels a bit out of reach. Maybe it's that you feel stuck, or you feel overwhelmed, stressed, trying to hold it all together. Maybe you've lost your spark or feel disconnected to why you started this in the first place. Or maybe there's an internal block and you don't know how to move through it. Or you could be the person that's sitting there and achieving their goals, but the goalpost keeps on moving. And this is the exact kind of work that I help women move through. It's about expanding your capacity to hold more impact, income, love, and freedom without burning yourself out or sacrificing yourself in the process. So I know a few more of you have just joined, but if you haven't done so already, go grab a journal, grab a pen, and over the next 2 days, we are going to be going through the framework and also experience real-time rewiring and how you can rewire success from the inside out, because tomorrow we get the opportunity to dive right in and do that in real time. So get your journal, get your pen, let everybody in. This originally was meant to be a one-day masterclass, and I was going to do the live energetics and breathwork session and bring you through the framework. And I was like, this is going to be so much information that you'll probably walk away and be like, I don't know how to implement this. So I was like, fuck it. If I am going to do it, I'm going to go all in. And that is what I have done. So like I had mentioned earlier as well, some of you know me, some of you might not know my story, but before I start to do this work, I spent nearly 7 years working in domestic violence and homeless services, and I adored this work and I adored working with people. And it's actually where I really got to understand the complexity of trauma, and not trauma just as a concept, but trauma as a lived experience. Like working with individuals, hearing their stories, witnessing how their past shaped how they showed up in the world, how they perceived safety, how they perceived relationships, how they perceived themselves. And it completely changed how I looked at human behavior. And I had also studied a postgraduate in trauma studies, but it was actually from the work of being in the day-to-day that actually allowed me to see how trauma was playing out in real time. And my professional background isn't the reason that I actually trained in the modalities that I trained in. It was because of my own experience. And these modalities have honestly changed my life, and since have changed my client's life, because about 5 years ago, I was at one of the lowest points in my life. And from the outside in, you probably wouldn't have noticed it. But I remember just feeling so lost, so stuck. I was in a really unhealthy relationship that did not serve me. I had zero boundaries, zero self-worth. And I just remember one incident happening. And that incident was like that point where it was like the pain of staying the change outweighed the pain, or the pain of staying the same outweighed the pain of change. And I wanted to change. I really wanted to change. I was doing all the things. I was going to therapy weekly. I was like cutting down on alcohol. I was exercising, but I still couldn't make the change that I needed to make. And what I understand now, what I didn't understand then, was I didn't have the capacity to make that change. I was living from a place of survival, and there may be a few of you on this call that don't feel safe enough in your body yet, or your nervous system, to actually choose differently. And because of that, it impacts how we perceive everything. It impacts how we perceive the world. It impacts how we make choices, how we show up, how we move through this world. And at the time, I didn't know how to work with the root cause until I found these modalities. And bless me, if anyone doesn't know me, I am a very sensitive soul. I feel very deeply. And for a long time, that was something that I really struggled to manage for years. But it's also the reason that I became fascinated with its work. It was the reason that I became fascinated with the nervous system. And I threw myself into courses, research books, everything. And it was honestly the ripple that just kept on rippling. But it was through this work that I could see the connection between the mind and the body, and that trauma wasn't something that we just think about. It was actually something that was with us, that we carried, that lived through us. And I could see how differently I showed up when I actually understood this. Like when I understood this, everything changed. It changed how I was actually showing up in my life, in my relationships, my relationship with myself. And it showed how much it had been impacting my life without me even realizing it. Because 5 years ago, if you would have told me that I'd be living in Bali, working online, helping other women break through their internal blocks and build a life and business that they love, I would have genuinely probably laughed at you. But this is the prime example of what becomes possible when you expand your capacity to work with the nervous system and expand your capacity to be able to rewire from the inside out. Still keep it joining. And so that will bring us into our first pillar. Can everyone hear? Is the audio okay for everyone? Yeah, amazing. So we are going to go through the 5 pillars in the Conscious Founder framework. And the first pillar is identity. So identifying the identity. And when I say identity, I don't mean your job. I don't mean your role. I don't mean what you do. I mean, your identity is the paradigm in which you live inside. It's the lens in which you see the world. It's in how you see yourself. It's what you believe to be true about you. And this lens impacts everything. It impacts how you show up. It impacts what you believe is possible for you. It impacts what feels safe, what feels risky, what feels out of reach. So before we go any deeper, I want you to just be really honest with yourself. And have you ever found yourself in a position where you knew what the next step was, but you didn't take it? Or you knew exactly what you needed to do, but you actually couldn't bring yourself to do that? Has anyone experienced that before, where they're like, I know what to do, but I just haven't done it? And just say in the chat box if you have. I've definitely been there before. And it maybe you knew what was going to push the needle forward, but you didn't do it. Maybe you knew what was going to bring you closer to your goal, but something stopped you. You overweighted it, you overthought it. Maybe you told yourself you needed more time, that you weren't ready. But this is what I want you to get clear. You had all of the information. You knew exactly what needed to come next. So it was not an information problem. It was not a strategy problem. It was not that you didn't know enough about what was coming next. This was a safety issue. It was an identity that didn't feel safe enough for you yet to hold. And our life is a mirror of our external world. And I want to be really clear with something and acknowledge that we didn't choose everything that happened to us in life. We didn't choose the trauma. We didn't choose the lack of safety. We didn't choose the conditioning, the survival patterns, but those patterns have kept you safe long enough to become the version of you that's sitting on this call today with me. But the part that is really hard is that we are the only person that is responsible and that has the ability to change it, because you're the only person that gets to decide what comes next, not because you caused it, but because you're the person that is still living with how it impacts your future. So when we look at these identities, it's not looking at it from a place of judgment or shame. It's looking at it with compassion and knowing that it's done exactly what it's needed to do to bring you to this version of you today. And your subconscious identity is running about 95% of your behavior. It's that automatic response. And your identity is made up of your subconscious beliefs, your nervous system patterns, past experiences that maybe have been normalized. And over time, that becomes your automatic way of seeing yourself and seeing the world. So for example, if your subconscious identity was, I'm not safe to be seen, you might struggle to show up, you might struggle to use your voice, you might make yourself smaller, put yourself inside boxes, maybe hide behind other people, maybe play small in your business, your career, your relationships. Or if your subconscious identity is, I have to prove my worth, your life might reflect you over delivering. You might put everyone else above yourself. You might undercharge. You might exhaust yourself to love or earn love and approval and validation. And something as well that we can kind of just get a bit clearer on, and I think it's really important, is you probably all have heard of like limiting beliefs. And when I talk about limiting beliefs, it probably seems like it's all merging in. So just to get really clear, a limiting belief is kind of what you think. And then your identity is like who you believe you are. So for example, if you have a belief that something like that doesn't happen to someone like me, that's not realistic for people like me, things like that don't happen. But underneath is that of that belief is the identity of I am not enough. So that belief is the surface thought, but the identity is the root. And the part that some people sometimes get mistaken for is there might be a part of you that is holding on to not being enough because there's a deeper fear under there of what your life would actually look like if you were enough. Because if you were enough and you were putting yourself in those rooms or using your voice, what if people judged you? What if you were seen differently? What if you outgrew relationships or friendships, or success meant it changed the things around you? So your nervous system does exactly what it's been designed to do. It protects you. It has perceived threat and it has now adapted through strategies to keep you safe. And it keeps you anchored in that old identity because that's what's familiar. And we know what is familiar is what feels safe to us. Not that it technically is safe, but what we have experienced, what has been normalized, and what we've lived through is our familiar self. And that is what creates that safety in us. And what feels familiar is always going to be safer than the unknown, the things that we haven't done before, the things that maybe are new to us, that are unfamiliar. And this is why sometimes when we're like standing in front of the mirror and we're trying to do affirmations alone, we cannot think our way into a new identity. It is a nervous system response, and your nervous system doesn't feel safe yet to embody that. So sometimes we can just use logic alone, and I see people like tell themselves from a logical reframing point, like, you know, other people have done it, I can do it, I'm capable, I have the skills, I'll figure it out. And while that definitely helps, and while it's definitely a part of the process, your body is also wired, and your nervous system will always pull you back towards what feels familiar, even if familiar is not where you want to be going, because the unfamiliar feels so safe. So when you start to shift that identity at the root, the limiting beliefs will keep coming up if it isn't actually shifted at the root. So if we just use logic and we tell ourselves, no, I can do this because other people have done it, when things get hard, that deeper root will still show up in other formats. It mightn't show up in your work anymore, but now it shows up of you not feeling like you're good enough to go to a run club by yourself. And that's why we could have the best plan, the clearest goals, and all the strategy, information, education, and still hold ourselves back, still find it difficult to move forward. Because your subconscious does not care about the qualifications, about the achievements. It cares about what kept you safe. And that is your programming. Whether we're aware of it or we're not aware of it, that is currently creating our own limits, whether it's in relation to our income, our visibility, our confidence, our relationships, and our health. And this is something that in the last year, there was like a really big identity shift that I had to move through. And it was before I went full time into this work. I genuinely believed that I didn't want to go all in on this work. I really enjoyed community work. I enjoyed working in homeless services. And my plan was to reduce my hours and go part-time alongside it. And that came where I reduced my hours and I went part-time. And something still didn't change. I just felt like it was like I didn't want to go full-time in it, but I still had this like niggle. And underneath wasn't a lack of belief that I was like fearing that it wouldn't work out. I just started to dig deeper and I realized there was an identity level story playing out that meant if I went all in, it was going to impact me in ways that I feared. And I understood everything. I understand that you can literally create your reality. I know the work, I understand the nervous system and the identity, but knowing the information wasn't the issue. I had to actually start to go inward. And when I started to look at that limitation, I actually started to see patterns show up from my past. I grew up in a self-employed household where work always came first. And my family worked extremely hard. They worked 7 days a week, 12-hour days, and they honestly gave everything to it, but it came with a lot of sacrifices. And what I first started to see when I looked at myself going full-time was if I go all in, I will lose my freedom. And the underneath that was I would be the type of person, that identity was I would have to be the type of person to choose between my success and peace. And it didn't come from anywhere. It was what I grew up around. It was what, I had seen through my lived experience. Like my family, we never had like dinners together. We never went on holidays together. Events were missed, birthdays were missed, the health issues, like it came with such sacrifice. And they would even tell me, never own your own business because you will always be tied to this. You will have no freedom. You will have to make all of the sacrifices. And don't get me wrong, you do still have to make sacrifices, but I'm talking about the sacrifices that come with the cost of like your health, your relationship, peace, the things that you most value. And that is a loss of freedom, a loss of connection, and a loss of peace. And really what I realized was my nervous system had learned that if I fully went in on this, it meant that I was going to lose that freedom. I was going to lose that sense of connection and I was going to lose that sense of peace. And because they're my core values, it made complete sense that I tried to build my life in a way that avoided actually choosing it. So my body did exactly what it had to do. It was like protecting me from what I believed mattered the most. But when I actually started to get really honest and I started to look at things through a different lens and I started to challenge it a bit more and create safety around what way I wanted work to look, what way I wanted self-employment to look. And I asked myself, like, what would it look like to build success without actually sacrificing my peace, sacrificing my relationships? And from there, it was just rippling and rippling. And even though I went all in, the old conditioning still showed up for me. I still felt that sense of urgency. I felt like I had to be working longer hours. I felt like I had to say no to plans with friends. And I still had to come back to my body and create a sense of safety that it is okay to hold this. It is actually okay to hold this life. And that what once felt like success costing what I valued, I now get to build success around what I value. And it no longer meant that I had to choose between that freedom, connection, and peace. And this is what I mean by paradigm. Like it literally is a shift of lens. Like I wouldn't be living the life I am now if I just continued to accept that as what was true. And it was true in a way because that is what has happened for my family. But it doesn't mean that you don't get to change it. You don't get to change the narrative. You don't get to change the story. So that is our first pillar, and we are going to jump into our second. And the second pillar is uncovering the protective patterns. And sorry, I'm just letting someone else in. Uncovering the protective patterns. So something that I also want to say before we get into this is every single one of us are probably doing something that isn't serving us right now, including me. And we could be very self-aware and we could probably know that that is the thing that we shouldn't be doing. But it's not from a lack of discipline. It's not from a lack of laziness or ability. It is because your nervous system is doing its job. And protective patterns are basically your your behaviors that your body has learned to keep you safe. So we don't do this consciously, we don't do this intentionally, but over time they're formed from your experiences of life through the world, developmental trauma, childhood experiences, past experiences, times maybe where you didn't have the power or the choice or the safety. And these protective patterns, they can show up in very normal ways, and they did their job. So again, we're not coming at this from a place of, can we just get rid of them and can we put them to bed because I want a different life now? But it's like looking at how they actually can show up, because they can show up in very normal ways throughout our day. So even if you think of like procrastination could potentially be protecting you from potential failure or judgment of others. Perfectionism could be protecting you from being criticized or rejected by others. People pleasing could be protecting you from being abandoned or losing that sense of connection. Playing small could be protecting you from standing out or being judged by others. Overgiving could protect you from feeling not enough by constantly having to prove your worth. And these patterns have done their job. They have worked at some point. They have kept you emotionally safe in those environments, and they helped you to survive those environments maybe where you felt like you didn't have the control. But they are probably the exact thing that is blocking your next level of expansion. And something that people often confuse is like the survival responses and the protective patterns. So when we think of the survival responses, they are your automatic nervous system responses. So fight, flight, fawn, freeze. They happen in your body. They happen in your body. And protective patterns are how these survival responses show up in your life. So for an example, if your nervous system drops into a freeze response when somebody is judging you, then your protective pattern might show up in perfectionism. And that might have been developed as a strategy to attempt to reduce the exposure of getting judged by others. And that pattern is there to reduce the likelihood of your survival response being activated again. So you may know that you want to raise your prices, but you don't. You may know that you want to share more and talk more about your offer online, but you avoid it. You may feel ready to share your story, share your voice, maybe more intimacy, more honesty, yet something stops you. And it doesn't just show up in your business, it shows up in relationships, it shows up in boundaries, it shows up in money, it shows up in how much joy you allow yourself have. And again, there is nothing wrong with this. And I know I keep saying this because we are not coming from a place of judgment. It is literally our nervous system has learned at some point that these things were not safe, that maybe using your voice meant being judged, that maybe making more money meant that you were greedy, maybe being successful meant sacrificing your freedom, maybe taking up space meant losing relationships. So your body has done its job and adapted and has created a strategy to keep you safe. And there was a time and place where that strategy was necessary. It kept you loved, it kept you in that sense of belonging and connection, but those environments no longer exist, and especially when we're moving into those new levels. And at the same time, the strategies that once protected you, they are the things that are keeping you stuck. And we can't just think our way out of it. We can't just use willpower and be like, I'm going to create safety, it's just going to happen. We cannot shame ourselves out of that survival response, because we cannot expand from a place of dysregulation. So coming back to safety again, expansion requires safety. So the work here isn't to get rid of the protective patterns, it is to understand them. It's to meet them with compassion, it's to regulate the body, it's to resource the body, it's to bring your system back to baseline and slowly and gently give your body new evidence that it is now safe to hold that. It is safe to be seen, it's safe to be paid, it's safe to receive, it's safe to expand. So instead of asking, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep snoozing my alarm and not going to the gym? Why do I keep procrastinating and not actually posting content? Ask yourself, what is it protecting me from? And start to look at what is underneath that, because once you understand that, this is where real change becomes possible. And recently, this is something that I worked with one of my clients. She was transitioning to working fully online from in person. And one of her goals was to have more clients, was to create obviously her online offer to be able to do that transition, to create freedom and the flexibility, but also to feel confident in the transition process. And some of her belief and protective patterns that she had identified early on was that she was really uncomfortable being visible online. She rarely shared or spoke about her work or what she did. And she believed that it would have to be at a certain price for people to jump in, not the price that she thought reflected the value of what she could give, but it was actually more the price that she thought was realistic and what people would pay. And this protective pattern that she identified was the exact thing that was getting in the way of creating the freedom that she actually wanted to create. So why so? She was staying small, she wasn't standing out, she wasn't giving people a reason to judge her. But we didn't just start by being like, right, well, you need to post more content. If you want to build an online presence and you want to move online, like you need to start doing this. We actually started to look at where these protective patterns came from and where what they were now protecting her from. And for this client, it went all the way back to school. It brought her through her own lived experience, like real life situations that had influenced her nervous system to keep her safe in that exact way. And what we started to do was to understand them and what they represented. And then how we actually started to integrate this work was we started to acknowledge it. We started to respect why it existed. And slowly her nervous system started to bring in new action, but her nervous system started to seek that safety in it. So we started with reframing, creating safety as she was moving forward with that action. And her showing up to be seen didn't now equate danger. Her charging more didn't mean that she was going to be rejected, or using her voice didn't threaten that it was going to threaten her sense of belonging or connection. And this is how we actually started to integrate these shifts into her real life of where they were blocking her from where she wanted to go next. And it wasn't that she just suddenly decided to action and become completely fearless. I did not force anything on her. This comes from an internal state. She raised her prices because she started to see the value in what she offered. She started to talk about her offer, to share her offer, because she fully believed in the work that she did. She fully believed the value that it brought to other people's life and the disservice that it would have been doing by not actually telling people how they can jump in. And she shows up so confidently around her offer, like her energy has completely shifted, and she didn't force herself up to show up differently. She didn't force herself to go online. She actually felt safer in her body holding that, which supported her to then show up differently. So that change didn't just happen because she understood it or because she put in the action and forced it. It happened because her nervous system no longer needed that pattern to feel safe. So right now for you, have a little think about something that maybe you've been avoiding. Maybe it's an offer that you haven't launched. Maybe it's a project that you've been putting off. Maybe it's content you haven't posted. Maybe it's a hard conversation that you have been resisting, or maybe it's a gym session that you have been putting off. And whatever comes to your mind, just see if you can notice how the protective pattern is showing up in your everyday. Are you procrastinating? Are you telling yourself you don't have time? Are you telling yourself you're not ready? And I know this can be a bit of a vulnerable share, but there is power in stating it, and there is power in actually voicing that and starting to integrate that, and it's the first step essentially to move into it. So if you feel comfortable, I would invite you to even just drop into the chat what protective pattern is showing up for you. It doesn't have to mean what it's protecting, but more so how it shows up in your day-to-day. What is the behavior it shows up in? Is it procrastination? Is it putting things off? Because this is the first step to us actually making that change. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, time is such a big one. Procrastination. Yeah. Perfectionism. Yeah, not feeling smart enough or knowledgeable enough. Amazing. Thank you for sharing, because looking at everything you're saying and like not feeling enough, avoiding hard conversations, like being able to identify them now, saying them out loud, you'll start to actually catch yourself in real time being like, oh, I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again. And in that moment, you have the space and time to be like, okay, how can I do things a little differently? How can I create safety around maybe having that hard conversation? How can I create safety around feeling like I'm enough? Transferred. I made my page and I haven't posted. Sorry, just reading that. Trained as a facilitator, made my page and haven't posted, telling myself I don't have time and overwhelmed. Yeah. And again, it's our body, it's that safety. And you're not the only one. I was there a couple of years ago. I did so many courses. I don't even know how many courses I did, but before I actually jumped into even offering holistic services. I did so many courses, and that was a protective pattern in itself. I felt like I didn't have enough. I felt like I had to keep doing more and more. And I spent $4,000 in branding. Like when I say branding, I mean my font colors and my everything like that. I spent €4,000 before I had clients, and I was like, looking back, I was like, that was the most that was a protective pattern in itself, because I didn't want, like, I was trying to do all of the things that were less resistance, because the one thing of actually jumping in and showing up and stepping into it was so scary that I used everything else. So it can come in so sneakily, and it shows up in a way that I call them logical excuses. You could be like, oh yeah, fair, that is, like, I don't have time, but it's like, we can make time and we can start to look at our schedule. But thank you. And we will be going on to the third pillar. And the third pillar is my favorite. The third pillar is peace is the new sexy, because peace is the new fucking sexy. And honestly, what is the point in creating your dream life, your dream business, if you don't actually have the capacity to enjoy it? And peace isn't just about, feeling zen and feeling calm. Peace is actually the thing that creates the space for you to feel joy, to feel excitement, to be able to create, to be able to expand. And I know, because you're here, that you want more for yourself, but you obviously want to be able to experience that too. And even if you've ever noticed, like, when we're stressed out of our head, it can be so hard to access that creativity. It can be so hard to actually think and gain clarity. And oftentimes when we're not stressed out of our head, and maybe it's when we're hopping into the shower or going out for a walk or just before we fall asleep, we come up with our best ideas. And that is not a coincidence. That is your nervous system being able to drop out of a survival response for a moment. Because when we're constantly stressed, when we constantly are feeling overwhelmed, high cortisol, your higher functionings of your brain are not working to their full capacity. And the part of your brain that is responsible for that clear thinking, creativity, perspective, decision making, that starts to go offline. And when we're stuck in that survival, it's not that we're bad at making decisions. It's literally our brain not having the capacity to access that clarity. Everything feels urgent, everything feels harder than it does. And even if you think back to a day that was really stressful, maybe your alarm didn't go off, you were late for work, or things just like started happening throughout your day that was like a domino effect, or work was really overwhelmed and you felt really stretched by the end of it, and you try to think about what you're going to have for dinner, and it's like the hardest decision that you actually have to make. And that alone shows us how you know what you want for dinner, and it's not laziness. Your nervous system is overloaded. And the part that most people don't realize is your life and your business can only hold how much your nervous system can hold. So that it really does determine how much you can hold in your relationships, in your health, in your income, in your joy, in your capacity to receive. And it is all limited by our nervous system's ability to regulate. So yes, you see people who are in a state of survival, and yes, they may achieve the thing, but oftentimes, if you are constantly growing from that place of dysregulation, if you are constantly growing from that place of survival, you will struggle to sustain it. You will struggle to hold it. You might actually hit the goal and feel like very flat, feel nothing. You might make more money, but feel completely drained when you get there. You might get an opportunity, and instead of being really friggin' excited about it, you are completely overwhelmed and feel like it's too much. And this is why so many people are successful, but they're absolutely exhausted. They are, they're achieving what they've set out to do, but they are sacrificing their health. They are growing, but they can't actually sustain what they're scaling at. They get what they want, but then it doesn't feel like what they thought it was going to be when they get there. And that is because when we try to grow from a place of survival, it is going to be very hard to sustain that. And at some point, your nervous system will probably catch up, and it will probably stop you, whether it's burnout, whether it's illness, self-sabotage, or just pure exhaustion. And if this has happened to you before, like, just let me know, say yeah in the chat, like where you've pushed through like a really stressful season, maybe it was work, maybe it was personal stuff, and you just really felt overwhelmed through, maybe it was a couple of weeks, a couple of days, and you finally stop and you finally go on holidays, or you finally take the break, and then you get sick, or then you crash, and it's like your nervous system is literally collapsing. It's literally starting to let go of all that tension of everything that you have had to hold. Yeah. And people who expand with ease understand this. They understand that peace is not a luxury. And they understand that this sets the foundation, that peace allows you to make clear decisions. Peace allows you to see opportunities. Peace allows you to build meaningful relationships, to enjoy what you're creating. And when you are regulated, when your body feels safe, you are frigging magnetic. Like you really are. Peace is magnetic, and you start creating from a place of clarity, not lack. You will start creating from a place of possibility, not control. You will start creating from a place of presence, not pressure. And this is why peace is the new fucking sexy. And peace is going to allow you to actually experience the joy in your life and why you're building the life that you want. So I want to make this really real for you, because oftentimes we delay the peace. It's like, once I do the thing, then I can relax, then I can enjoy it. And the thing that actually allows you to hold that desire, that experience, that success that you're calling in is peace in the first place. Like, it's actually a thing that will allow you to hold that level of success. And Charlotte is one of my clients who is a perfect example of this. Charlotte is a 6-figure business owner, and she was completely stressed out when she started working with me. She was hitting consistent months, but she was constantly in this fear that the money was going to go dry next month. And she had built an incredible business. She was very successful on paper, but behind the scenes, she could not even enjoy it. She ended up in hospital. She was having a lot of physical symptoms from stress. And she basically had this business that was thriving, but felt completely drained in her own life. And she also had goals for herself on top of this, to be able to scale her business, to also be able to set up a second business, because she wanted to expand into the holistic space and to actually start doing that as her greater vision. And what we did wasn't worked on strategy. We actually worked on safety. So we came back to create a sense of safety in her body, because like I said, you are not going to be able to expand from a place of safety. She was also struggling to manage what she was holding at that time. And it also didn't feel good. And what is the point if it feels like shit? And so it was about creating that nervous system roadmap that brought her back into that baseline state and created that sense of safety back in her body. And she did the hard work. She had difficult conversations. She kept her boundaries. She did the things that she needed to do and showed up for herself and really prioritized that piece. And within 4 weeks, literally 1 month, she hit her biggest revenue month. And not only did she make what she consistently makes, but she actually 5x'd her investment of what she made into this mentorship. And it was not because she worked harder. It was not because she forced herself to show up differently. It was actually because she finally allowed her body to feel safe, to allow herself to create that safety within so that she could hold more. And the thing about this is, she was trying to do this on her own. She was wanting to step in, obviously, to the holistic space. She has a lot of education and a lot of awareness around this. But when she was in that space of survival, it was really, really hard to access that, because those higher functioning parts of our brain can be really hard to access when we're constantly just kind of going from one thing to the next thing and trying to hold it together. So this is what I mean by peace not being a luxury. It is literally the foundation. And Charlotte has she's just finishing up her 12 weeks, and she's actually started her second business since. So in this, she has scaled her first business. She's brought in a hire. She's created more space. She's created her second business. She's trained in all the modalities that she wanted to train in, and she's already started taking on clients, which is actually insane to think that 12 weeks ago she was in hospital because she was so stressed out. But this is what I mean when you can create that safety within. So think of you right now, and let's just tune into your body and tune into your week, your month. And is there something that your body is asking for? Is there something that your body needs more of right now? Maybe it's rest, maybe it is safety, maybe it's to slow down, maybe it's support, maybe it's accountability. Is there something that it's asking for? And pop it into the chat. And I think one of the biggest things we can do is literally just slow down. Safety. My body's asking for more accountability. Yeah. Rest, boundaries. And that's actually really interesting with the boundaries. So one of the protective patterns that showed up for Charlotte was because of that fear of not making the consistent months, because of her body being in that place where it was driven from ego. It was driven from the control aspect, because of just feeling so unsafe in that survival, that she used to take shit from her clients, that they used to say things, she had very little boundaries. It was almost like she was coming from that place of need. And when she actually started to create that safety, literally the right clients started coming through the door, the right people started coming in, like her boundaries and her standards were set, and it felt so much better for her as well. So even though it looks like we're doing less, or we're taking away from it, it's actually creating more for you. Amazing. Amazing. And keep note of what your body is asking for, because for the next week you should try prioritize something that is going to either give you that rest, whether it's even just 1%, where it's like, right, I'm going to finish up work an hour early if you can, or else it's going to be, I'm going to do a digital detox, like whatever looks like realistic for you in your week. Try to actually do that this week and see how it actually impacts your life. And the fourth pillar is create an actionable plan. So obviously aligned action is very important, because we cannot just say, I want this and I want this to happen this way, and expect it to land on our laps. But before we get into making the plan, it is really important to get clear on a few things first. So we will get clear on a few things first, and then we will dive into the actionable plan and the aligned action that follows. But we could still achieve the goal that we're calling in, and we could still feel empty because it wasn't aligned, or because it wasn't actually what we were chasing. So that is why sometimes the goalpost keeps on moving for us. We get to the thing and we're like, oh, maybe now I actually need to do another marathon. Or maybe now, like if you don't feel safe enough at your 5K, I can promise you right now, you're not going to feel safe enough at your 10K. What you think what you think is going to bring you, it is not going to bring you. That sense of safety is from within. So that is why the goalpost keeps on moving and we keep chasing this void. And that is why a lot of people, they focus on the physical outcome. They focus on hitting the 10K revenue. They focus on selling out the launch. They focus on getting the perfect partner. They focus on getting the followers. But the thing that you actually want is the feeling you believe that goal is going to bring you. So it's not about the online business. It's about the freedom that that online business is going to bring you. It's not about your 100K followers. It's the impact and the connection that that's going to bring you. It is not about the number that is in your bank account. It's the safety and the choice and the peace that that number brings you. So before we take that action, it is so important for us to get clear on that feeling, and whether it is safety, whether it is connection, belonging, pride, like feeling chosen, like whatever that is for you, start to actually identify what that goal. So have your goal in mind and be like, what do I actually want? What way do I want to feel when I achieve this goal? And something that I do, and all of my clients do now, is they take 3 steps in which you can actually cultivate that feeling every day. And what I mean by that is, you're like, well, I'm not going to get 10K into my bank every day, but it's like, okay, that's safety, right? So how can I create safety every day? So every day I'll ensure that I will do some practice that will bring a sense of safety into my body. One of my other ones is impact. I can't guarantee that I'm going to have clients every day, but what I can guarantee is I can guarantee that I can go outside and I can smile at someone and I know I can make an impact. So start to cultivate that feeling, break it down. How can you actually start feeling that feeling now in your reality? And I promise you, your goal is going to become a byproduct of that, because you're not going to be coming from a place of lack. You're going to be coming from a place of whole, because you already have that experience. And the next thing is to align your goal with your values. And this is massive, because we sometimes can set up goals and we think it's the thing that we want and maybe the way that we want to get it, and it can be really misaligned with our own internal values. So you might want to make more money, but if you are going to make more money by working longer hours, losing your freedom, losing your flexibility, and freedom is one of your core values, you're going to feel this sense of internal conflict. A lot of times people they'll feel almost like anxiety when something it's happening, because it feels very misaligned with their values. And the same thing can actually happen with our goals. We actually get to the thing and it doesn't feel the way we thought it was going to feel. We feel like a bit meh, or else we've decided that something else is going to bring us that feeling. And that misalignment will create that internal conflict. And a lot of times we can feel stuck, or we can feel like we're pushing against ourselves. So Our values are constantly shaping, they're constantly changing because we are constantly evolving and shaping. So for you right now, in this season of your life, as you're moving into 2026, what are your top 2 values? And you can pop them into the chat here to keep you accountable, to share with others. Like, our values change season to season, but what feels very alive and true to you at the moment? Is it connection? Is it freedom, peace, health, impact, growth, peace and clarity? Love that. Freedom, impact, and growth. Amazing. Connection, yeah. Amazing. And these are so important, like to be able to actually live our life in alignment with our values is so important. And creating a plan or creating how we're going to get to the goals or the milestones that we want, it is also so important that we are actually living in alignment with those values. So once we get clear on that feeling, once we get clear on the values, this is where we can actually start to make that actionable plan. Because without the clarity, without action, nothing will change. So what I will say is, you do not need a 10-step plan. You do not need a 10-step plan. You do not need to have it all figured out. And you just need to focus on the next 1 or 2 steps. You do not need to overwhelm yourself. So instead of asking, how am I going to get there? Just focus on the next aligned movement. Because when you start to focus on your why rather than your how, everything changes. Because if we start looking at, I want to make a 20K a month, and maybe right now you're only making 5K, and it's like, how, like, that seems like the biggest jump ever, and it can seem so much to us. But know your inputs. Start taking, what is your next step? Okay, I have to look at another offer. I have to look at my pricing, like look at the logistics of it and start to just take the next step. You might get to step 3 and be like, fuck, okay, we have to evolve and change this a little more. But you're actually further along than you would have been if you just sat down and was like, no, I need to have it all figured out right now. And the other thing I will mention is, because aligned action sounds like it's aligned and it's floaty and it's like, it feels good. Yes, it feels good, but it's still uncomfortable and it will still stretch you. And there is a difference between something being genuinely unsafe and something feeling uncomfortable. Like, unsafe is that survival response where you are at immediate threat because maybe your life is on the line. And if that is the case, then don't do the thing, maybe. But if it is that you are just uncomfortable and you are at your edges, this is still normal. This is where growth happens. Growth will stretch you, and that is normal. And it's actually how we support ourselves through that growth is the dictator of how it impacts us and our goals. So every time you do take that aligned action, try break it down. Try not to go all in and have like 0 to 90, because sometimes when we do that, we'll collapse the nervous system. We went far past our edges and it feels like too much too fast, which is essentially a stress response. And what we do is we start to build on the aligned action. We start to build new evidence. And even though it's with discomfort, we start to resource our body. We start to create that sense of safety, that internal sense of safety. And our nervous system isn't going to rewire itself through thinking. It will rewire through lived experience. So when we actually put ourselves in the position of receiving, when we put ourselves in the position that feels a little uncomfortable, and we sit with that and we support ourselves through that and we create safety around that, and then we build new evidence, that's where things start to ripple and things start to change. And it's not that we wait until we feel ready, because it is the biggest myth. You will never feel ready. If it is something that stretches you, if it doesn't stretch you, it's probably not big enough, and I would tell you to dream a little bigger. But when we can actually act and move forward and support ourselves and not do too much too fast, then this is where we'll actually be able to stretch to our edges, which is essentially stretching your capacity, which you've probably heard me say numerous times, but that is what it is. We are just literally stretching that tolerance. And when we stretch to the edge without going over into shutdown response, we actually have the capacity to choose the next step. We make it manageable and doable enough. We support ourselves through it. And this is how we can continue to expand our capacity. And that's the version of you who can hold more visibility, the version of you who can hold more money, more love, more responsibility without it costing you your peace. And when your goals are aligned with your action and it's being supported, it will feel different because you might have tried to do, sometimes I've actually seen this before, like where it's like people have like shot up following because a reel has went viral. So they've went from like maybe like 10K followers to like 200K, and then they just fall off the face of the earth because it was so much so fast. And it's like being able to actually support yourself through something like that. Obviously, that's something that is like a little out of your control, but it's like coming back to safety when things, because sometimes life does happen and things will come at rapid speed, but creating that safety is the most important part. And even when we move through that discomfort, when we're growing, you will know the difference because it will feel energizing. You won't move through the discomfort and be like, fuck that, I wish I never done it. You're probably like, I'm so proud I did that. Like this feels, it lights me up. It's a fire in my belly. I'm so happy I did that. And that's when you know that it's coming from that place. And you know when it's like coming from a place that is your truth and your authentic self. So for creating an actionable plan, get clear on the goal, get clear on the feeling that you think that goal is going to bring you. Make sure that that goal is aligned with your value, or how you're going to achieve that goal is aligned with your value. And then start to take small actionable steps, supporting yourself through it as you like stretch your edges and step into it. And even from my own experience over the last year, I co-hosted a retreat in Bali, and this is before I even had went all in on my business. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I had zero proof. I had never done a retreat before. I also had never flown anyone to another country to join me. And I also didn't know the logistics, like exact plan of a retreat. I had an idea, but I didn't know everything. I knew obviously to book a venue, but even the planning of it, the insurance, the finances, everything around that, and obviously then bringing people over into a new country as well. Everything that came with it, there was a lot of uncertainty. I didn't have the plan. I did not have the 10-step plan, but I did know that I wanted to create a space for like-minded women to be able to come into the space, to be able to do the deeper work, to be able to expand their capacity, to be able to connect with their vision, and to be able to do that in Bali. And I was like, so fuck it, I'm doing it. And I just literally took the first step, which was to put down the deposit. And after that, within 5 months, I didn't even know how to sell that retreat. That was like, that wasn't even strategy based. That was like purely throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what stuck. And within the 5 months, that retreat sold out. 10 business owners flew to Bali. And it was probably one of the greatest things that I did in my life. But it did terrify me. It fucking terrified me because I didn't have all the steps. But this is what I mean by when you fully trust yourself and you fully know that you are going to be capable to move through any uncertainty, to move through any challenges that comes with it, and you can back yourself in it, you will be able to move forward like that. And that comes from doing the hard things. It comes from sitting in the discomfort. So one question that I always ask, if I feel like I'm stuck, if I feel like, do I do this, do I not do this, is I ask myself, what would my next step be if I fully trusted and I fully backed myself? And then that's the step I take. And a male actually asked me that recently. He was like, how do you find that you can lead more with the feminine, and how do you find that you can actually, like, when you kind of get too much in your head and feel stuck and can't move forward? And I was like, this is literally the question that has changed my life, because any moment in time that I am a bit like, oh, it makes me a little anxious, I don't know, because anxiety and excitement can feel very similar, I ask myself this question. So I'm also actually going to ask you now, think of a goal, think of something that you probably have goal planned because it's 2026. And if you haven't, maybe you just have something in mind. But if you fully trusted yourself and backed yourself, what would your next step be? And it could literally be like making the landing page. It could be having a conversation, like literally just voicing it to someone. What would be your next step for your goal? It could be signing up for the gym. Put it in the chat. I would love to hear, because it will keep you accountable as well. Posting my first post. Yes, do it. Do it after this call. Going all in on my business. Yes. And you've already started taking action. Good woman. Promoting my offers. Shout it from the rooftops, girl. Shout it from the rooftops. Posting more, posting my business page. Do it. Sharing more poem spells. Yes. Share your voice. There's people there that are wanting to hear it and listen to you. Amazing. Your modules, online portal. Amazing. full-time in your business, do it, go all in. I think the bigger the risks, the bigger the payoff. And you now have the framework where you can support yourself through it as well. Amazing. Call. Ah, magic already happened during the call. Amazing. Amazing, Siobhan. Oh, I love that. So you don't need the full plan, girlies. You have the next step. And I want you to keep yourself accountable this week. How can you do this? Try to do it in the next 24 hours, but I'm not coming from a place of pressure or force. So if it feels better, feel into it and give yourself the 7 days. But just do it. Just do it. And we're on to our final pillar. Amazing. So our final pillar in the Conscious Founder framework is around rewiring and integration. And this is how we can actually make the lasting change. So the other pillars have built a lot of awareness, and awareness is really powerful because without awareness, we can't change anything. It is the first step, and we have to be able to see and identify the pattern before we can actually shift the pattern. And there is a quote from Carl Jung that I'm sure a lot of you have heard before, that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will cultivate. And this is true for so many of us. We just assume that this is the way life is, that these things, this is just what happens. This is the type of family I come from. This is the type of background. This is just how life plays out for me. And there is a lot of conditioning. There is a lot of stories. There could be, you know, from our past experiences, whether it's trauma, there's a lot of things that are influencing this lens, this paradigm. So we aren't just going to think our way into this new reality. It also comes with working subconsciously. It comes with working with the body. It comes with working deeper with those beliefs, those narratives, the things that no longer align with where we want to go or the life that we want to create. And awareness is, like I said, the first step, and awareness is so important. But the integration, this is the part where everything actually happens. And you can have all of the insights, you can understand your patterns, you can know exactly what your wound is and where it came from, and you can still end up reacting the same way. You could still end up in the same cycles because your body remembers and the subconscious is still there running the show. And that's why it doesn't mean that awareness didn't help us. It was our first step, because now it means that we actually get to respond, we get to go inward and we get to change that response. And it can be really easy for us when we're feeling our highest, most best self, when life is going to plan, when life is great, when we're calm, when we're regulated, things will feel easy. It will be easy to do the hard things, say, like going to the gym or having the hard conversations. But the real work is when things are hard, when we are under pressure, when we're triggered, when there's uncertainty, when we're stretched. That's when those programmings come back online. That is when the subconscious, the things under the surface, the conditioning, the story, the narratives, that's when they start to come back up and they're expressed through your body. So the stories, the narratives, the experiences that we have experienced through life, they have sometimes come from childhood, like I said earlier, developmental trauma, through relationships, through what was normalized, through stress. And it might have been, I am not safe to be seen. I need to be perfect to be accepted. I need to over deliver to be valued. If I rest, I'll fall behind. If I expand, something will go wrong. And these stories, they don't sit in just your logical mind and your conscious mind. They actually shape how you feel. And how you feel shapes how you show up. It shows up through your behavior, and through your behavior, it compounds into how your life plays out in front of you. And so the subconscious is really closely linked with our nervous system patterns because it defaults back into that automatic response. And rewiring is basically updating that programming, updating that conditioning, forming new neural pathways. And I'm going to go through 3 kind of important ways in which we can actually rewire, or we can integrate this as well. And the first one is rewiring in real time. And this is through how you show up. So when we rewire, when we rewire in real time, the consistent action that we show up and integrate daily, like that starts to become our normal, because most of you here sitting on this call, because I know that you joining this call, you are not unaware you have probably done a lot of healing, you have probably done a lot of personal development, you're actually probably very self-aware and too self-aware. And that self-awareness doesn't stop the nervous system defaulting under pressure. When it signals that threat response, it still comes back online. So when we're rewiring in real time, it's more about how we respond rather than react. So say when something activates you, when something triggers you, maybe it's a comment that somebody made, maybe it's implementing boundaries, maybe it's something that someone says, maybe it's a moment of uncertainty. Instead of going straight into that automatic response, so whether it's like you want to tear someone's head off, or you want to give them the cold shoulder, or you want to just fight back at them or walk away, instead of letting that response rule how you're going to react, just take a moment, pause, give yourself the space, come back to safety, resource your body, regulate your body, bring yourself back into that space of safety. And what happens is that pause creates a choice. That pause creates perception that can shift the power of the pause, yes, it shifts your perception. And rather than responding, or rather than reacting, you are responding. Essentially, those higher functioning parts of our brain, they start to come back online when we can bring back in safety into the body, which allows us to choose differently. It allows us to show up differently. And rewiring also happens when you intentionally show up as the version that you are becoming, even before it fully feels like a natural response. So if you're building a business and stepping into more visibility, holding more responsibility, rewiring is consciously choosing to make decisions and behaviors that match the version of you that has that thing, that has that desire, that has that experience, and doing it over and over again. And that is how we will build neural pathways. And if you think of a meadow that is completely overgrown, and you walk through the meadow once and it pushes down the grass slightly, the third time you walk through it, it pushes it down a little more. By the 10th time, it pushes it down even more. And by the 100th time you walking through that meadow, there's a very, very clear path there. It is going to be less resistance. It is going to be easier. And that is essentially how we will build those neural pathways as well. And at first, when you are trying to do this, it will feel like more effort. It will feel a little hard. You will have to consciously pull yourself and be like, okay, I need to choose differently. And there might be times where it's like, fuck it, I actually blew my head. But the next time I'm going to try better. I'm going to try actually take the space. And it can feel stretching, but over time, the more we do it, just like that meadow, it becomes the path of least resistance. It becomes that automatic response. The second way is rewiring at a subconscious level and working with the body as well. So when we rewire while working with the body, we're not using the logical mind. And this matters because a lot of our conditioning doesn't come from up here. It comes from our lived experience, and understanding it doesn't always change it. So we might understand something but still see those cycles play out. So that's why practices like breath work, meditation, hypno, visualization, somatic, energetic work, they help you drop out of the mind and into the body. And your nervous system begins to slow down, you begin to soften, your body begins to be more accessible to process what's been stored. And where things like, past experiences, emotional memory, identity patterns, old survival responses, they are lived through sensations and reactions in the body. So instead of analyzing the pattern, you're actually just allowing your body to experience something different, to release, to actually create safety in doing that, to create safety whilst in that experience, to support yourself, to feel enough, to feel that expansion. And it's through the body that it learns through that experience that your system feels safe enough. So when stored trauma releases, maybe incomplete trauma or stress cycles can complete, the nervous system recalibrates. It's almost like you've just did a really big reset button. And that's why oftentimes if you have done a breathwork session, or you have done an energetic session or something of the kind, even a meditation, you come out and you're like, I feel like a changed woman. I feel so much lighter. Something shifted. And it is really on that deeper level. And it's not because you forced change, but it's because you finally gave your body the space and it had the conditions to let that go. And this is actually a really powerful one for people who've done a lot of mindset work and just solely mindset work, because sometimes the patterns can show up and up again, over and over again. And sometimes it's actually really about coming back into the body, because there may be a cycle that's incomplete in our body. So really being able to lead with your body in that sense. And the third thing and our last thing to go through for our integration pillar is the RAS. So the RAS is the part of your brain basically which has its built-in filtration system. And it is constantly analyzing your environment. It is constantly scanning your environment for what is a threat. So it is constantly deciding what you notice and what you don't notice, because basically it's going to see if what is of importance. Like, we need to, Aoife, she doesn't feel like she's enough, so let's look for everything in her environment that will actually validate that belief that is underneath there. So it actually starts to shape how we see the world. It starts to shape the opportunities. It starts to shape what we lean into in conversations. Like, even you might have noticed sometimes having a conversation and someone could have told you 5 amazing things about you and gave one piece of feedback that might have been difficult to hear, and that's the thing that we latch onto, and it might be because it's feeding something deeper within us. And this filtration system is shaped on your subconscious beliefs, the stories that are deeply embedded within us. So what we see in the world and what we take in actually depends on what is in that system and what we tell it is of importance. And that's why I say even language is very important. I say to my clients, like, if they say, oh, that always happens to me, I'm like, does it always happen? I'm sure there's been a time it hasn't. There might be a majority of time, but we have to be really careful about what we tell ourselves, because that is essentially what we are going to seek out. That is going to become a reality. It's what we'll seek evidence for. And that happens as well at a subconscious level. But what I would say is be really, really mindful of the language that you use. And your brain will naturally look for the evidence to confirm what you believe. So if you do believe that I'm behind, I'm not doing enough, it's not safe to slow down, your brain is going to keep finding proof that supports that story. Not because that is 100% true, but it's because it's the information that you're telling your system to prioritize. And that is why bringing awareness to it and catching yourself and becoming more conscious about this starts to actually support you in that integration section as well. Because when we start to rewire at a nervous system and subconscious level, that internal story begins to change. But it's also really important for us to change consciously the language that we use as well, because we'll start to notice different opportunities. We'll start to notice different things in conversations. Instead of looking at being like, she's looking at me weird, her body posture has changed. That's not something we're fixated on, because it's not feeding in a story or a belief underneath. And an example of this, I worked with a client recently who had actually a deep fear around the consistency and money coming in, and really feared that there would never be enough. And she had built this life that she obviously enjoyed living, and always feared that, what if I can't keep living out what I want to be living, the luxuries that I have. And it showed up in the way that she was showing up in her work. So she was like overgiving, she was undercharging, she was letting boundaries slide, and she didn't feel as aligned with who she was working with. But this fear of, I don't know if it's going to come next month. It's coming from that place of that lack, the limitations, the ego, and it was coming from a place of need and not a choice. And her nervous system didn't actually feel safe enough in receiving what she was getting. So she felt like she almost had to give more money. More time to get more money. And sometimes she was giving time without even charging for it. She was pleasing more. And that was kind of creating a sense of safety for her by being able to give more and merge her boundaries, merge her expectations. That was her protective pattern. Be like, if I do this, I'll get this back. It will create a sense of safety. And it was then through practices of breath work, of energetics, and coming into the body to actually create safety around receiving, to create that resistance, to feel whole, and everything else was the overflow. And it completely changed her relationship with her clients. It completely changed how she showed up. Her boundaries got so firm with when she started work, when she didn't start work. She sat through a lot of discomfort and had hard conversations. Like, there was comments that had been happening for a while from different clients, and she addressed them from a place of safety. It wasn't from a place where she felt like, if I do this, I know I need to do this because Eva said this is going to help, or this is something that's going to help me shift how I show up in my work. She created safety within first before she actually took that action. So before we finish up, I want you to think about one way that you might show up a little differently this way. So when you think of integrating and you think of rewiring, whether it's through your real-time rewiring day to day, whether it's like working with someone in a somatic session, or whether it's being conscious of your language, what is the one thing that maybe one small way that you could show up differently for yourself this week that's going to support the version of you that you are stepping into? And you can pop it in the chat. Amazing, responding or reacting. Power of the pause. I love that, Faye. I love power of the pause. It has a bit of a ring to it. Amazing. Not coming from a place of need, overgiving, undervaluing. Yeah. And honestly, watch that change. Like it really does. When you start to show up differently, things with it will start to mirror in your reality, even with energetically. When we start to, maybe it's a client that's not aligned, and actually saying no instead of the fear of like, okay, I just need that money. I promise you, another aligned client is going to come in that is even better, like you're going to actually enjoy working with. And it's like when we're coming from that place of wholeness, it actually creates so much more opportunity around us. Amazing, amazing. I love this. Well, really try anchoring what you have mentioned. And I know there has been a few things that we've kind of touched on and how we are going to show up differently through this week. And I'm so excited because tomorrow we obviously have day 2. And today we have went through the 5 pillars from my Conscious Founder framework. And this is the exact framework that I work with within my container. So the clients that I work with in my Elevate mentorship, we work on a one-to-one basis. So it's a 12-week container, and it not only offers a one-to-one space for you, it also offers a space to connect with like-minded women. You get the one-to-one support, you get the results that you actually want, and it's a blend of group breathwork and energetic sessions, group live educational calls, and access to the hub with lots and lots of resources. And most importantly, it is that one-to-one support. We focus on bringing the nervous system back into that baseline, back into that safety, because we cannot expand from a body that cannot hold the next level. And I know that this container is not for everyone, but it is a space where we will be moving through subconscious blocks, the exact ones that are driving your self-sabotage, the ones that are keeping you stuck, whether it's the money blocks, whether it is difficulty dropping into receivership, whether it is the creative block that is preventing you from showing up online consistently, whether it's the imposter voice that is telling you that you are not ready or that you do not have time. Whatever season this is for you, this is for you to move through it, not with force, not with pressure, but creating that sense of safety to hold it, to rewire subconsciously, and to have that accountability. And the thing about this program too is that it is not something that you just jump on a call and then you are left to your own devices to integrate. Together, we make a very practical and tangible plan and how you can actually start to initiate and make this change to get the results that you want. And I am along the way supporting you as well, and it is my core program, and it is exactly this framework that I use inside the program. It is one that's really close to my heart, and it is insane because it's exactly what I wish I had when I created this. I put everything into it, and Aoife, I don't know if Aoife's on the call actually, maybe she is. Aoife jumped in with me in November, and I'm so happy she did, because she was going to wait till she signed up in the new year. And she realized that it would only be impacting her and her goals and where she had. And she just took the leap and she signed up, and she's absolutely smashed it. She has literally achieved so much, and I'm so bloody proud of her. And if she had waited until literally this month, we would only be starting. And she's coming to the end of her 12 weeks, and she's already living the goals that she came in with. And she's now in the position of actually living the life that she was trying to put off. And I am buzzing because she has signed up. I don't know if she's Aoife. She has signed up and she's just resigned. So I'm buzzing to make the next set of goals happen. So if this is something that you also want, if this feeling is what you want to experience. If this container is something that you feel like will be supportive for you, it does have that one-to-one support. It includes the group calls, it includes real-time rewiring, it includes the full resource hub that can be just yours for €2,000. We can also split that up into €700 a month. And just for you guys watching live, not on the replay, I am also going to throw in a one-to-one breakthrough session with me as an extra, and that is valued at 222. And this container, this mentorship, is a very intimate space, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. So I will be opening up 5 spaces, and I will not be overfilling it. I will be prioritizing the people that jump in, because I want to prioritize that level of support to get you to where you want to get to that next level and not dilute the experience. So again, if you want to jump in on this, this is not just a group program. This is something that is that one-to-one support, and I'm there to support you through it as well. And I know that you can implement everything that we have spoke and we've touched on today. But if you've listened to this and you know that this is the exact thing that is going to get you closer to where you want to go, and you want that accountability, and you know that this container is going to be the one that will hold you to make this happen, please message me after this. Message me Expand on Instagram, and we can have a little chat. We can see if this is the right container for you. And what I might do as well is I might pop my application in here, and if you want, you can have a look at that and apply through there. But like I said, there will be only 5 spaces. But this is only day 1. And I am so freaking excited that I sat in the energy with you today. And I'm really, really appreciative as well of you sharing and you being vulnerable and you putting the things in the chat, because I know it is not always easy, but like this will make the difference for you when you start to actually act on that, when you start to voice that. And I would love to hear one last thing from you. I would love to hear what your biggest takeaway is from today's session. And I'm going to get the application form for the mentorship. I can do less and track more. Yes. Not having to know the whole plan. Yeah. Focus on your why, not your how you're going to get there. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Yes, that safety.